Okay.
I still don't know what you're
Welcome, everybody, to the Bellevue City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 at 6 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. Father Tom Jones, Church of the Holy Spirit, is here with us this evening. Please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Almighty God, to whom we must account for all our powers and privileges, send down upon those who hold office in our city council the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice. Open their hearts to hear the concerns of those they represent. Guide them so they may make wise decisions, and enable them through steadfast purpose to faithfully serve in their office and promote the well-being of all people. We ask all this through him who makes all things possible. Amen.
Thank you, Father Jones. I will call the meeting to order. Shirley, would you take roll call, please?
Yes, Councilman Casey.
Here.
Councilman Cook.
Here.
Councilman McCaw.
Here.
Councilman Preister.
Here.
Councilman Burns.
Here.
Councilwoman Welch.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of that act is located on the rear wall of the council chambers. Item 5, approval of agenda, consent agenda, claims, and advisory committee reports. 5A, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Councilman Cook?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Cook, seconded by Casey. Any discussion, questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 5B, approval of the consent agenda. Items marked with an asterisk are approved where this item is, unless otherwise removed. Do I have a motion? Councilman Casey?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Casey, seconded by McCaw. Any discussion or questions? Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I would remove the claims. I have a conflict of interest and will be abstaining.
Okay, so are we putting the claims on the regular agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So putting the claims on the regular agenda. Any other comments or discussion? All right, please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 7, no special presentations this evening. Item 8, we do not have, sorry. Item 6 is back on the regular agenda, approval of the claims. Do I have a motion? Councilman Casey?
I'll make a motion we approve the claims.
Second.
Motion by Cook, seconded by McCaw. Please vote.
Give me 1 minute, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, can you repeat the motion for the claims?
Motion by Cook, seconded by McCaw.
I'm going to do a roll call vote. Casey?
Yes.
Councilman Cook?
Yes.
Councilman McCaw?
Yes.
Councilman Preister?
I abstained
Thank you.
due to a conflict. I abstain due to a conflict.
Thank you. Councilman Burns?
Yes.
Councilwoman Welch?
Yes.
Thank you. Vote is 5-1, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 7, we have no special presentations. Item 8, we have no organizational matters this evening. Item 9, we did not receive any citizen communications. Item 10, liquor licenses. 10A, recommend approval of the application for a Class C liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits on and off sale for Two Brack Holdings LLC, doing business as Knockouts, located at 848 Cornhusker Road, Suite 104, Bellevue, Nebraska, 68123. And Kalisha Richard as manager. I will open up 10A for public hearing. If there's anybody to speak regarding that recommendation for a liquor license, please come forward. Is the applicant in the audience? Okay, thank you for coming. Anybody want to speak regarding 10A? Please come forward. Seeing nobody, I'll close the public hearing, and do I have a motion? Councilwoman Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recommend motion to be approved to approve the application for a Class C liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits on and off sale for Two Brack Holdings LLC, doing business as Knockouts, located at 848 Cornhusker Road, Suite 104, Bellevue, Nebraska, 68123, and Kalisha Richard as manager.
Second.
Motion by Welch, second by Cook. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 10B, recommend approval of an application for a Class D liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits off sale only for Come and Go LLC, doing business as Come and Go 373, located at 13905 Williamsburg, Bellevue, Nebraska 68123, and Jonathan Mileham as manager. I will open up 10B for public hearing. If there's anybody that wants to speak regarding that recommendation, please come forward. Again, is the applicant in the audience? Okay, thank you for coming. Anybody else want to speak regarding 10B? Please come forward. Seeing nobody, I'll close the public hearing and I'll take a motion. Councilman Casey?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the recommendation for approval of an application for a Class D liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits off sale only for the Come and Go LLC, doing business as Come and Go 373, located at 13905 Williamsburg, Bellevue, Nebraska 68123, and Jonathan Mileham as manager.
Second.
Motion by Casey, seconded by Burns. Any comments or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 10C, recommend approval to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission, the application for Kevin M. Ames as the new manager for Grandmothers, Inc., doing business as Don and Millie's at 2208 Pratt Avenue, Bellevue, Nebraska, 68123. And I will open up 10C for public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak regarding 10C? Is the applicant in the audience? Thank you. Anybody wanting to speak regarding 10C, please come forward. Seeing nobody, I'll close the public hearing. And do I have a motion? Councilman Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission, the application of Kevin M. Ames as a new manager of God Mothers, Inc., doing business as Don and Millie's at 2208 Pratt Avenue, Bellevue, Nebraska, 68123.
I'll second that.
Motion by Cook, seconded by Welch. Any comments or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. And we appreciate the applicants for showing up just in case there's any questions, but you're all good. Item 11, ordinances for adoption, third reading. 11A, ordinance number 4130, amending sections of Chapter 19 of Bellevue Municipal Codes regarding notice, procedures for nuisance violations, and authorizing the mayor to sign. Shirley, would you read that ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 4130, an ordinance to amend Chapter 19 of the Bellevue Municipal Code by adding sections 19-8, 19-14, 19-23, 19-42, 19-52, and 19-95 regarding notice, procedures for nuisance violations, and to provide an effective date.
Thank you. And do I have a motion? Councilwoman Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 4130.
Second.
Motion by Welch, second by McCaw. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 11B, ordinance number 4131, amending sections of Chapter 29.5 Bellevue Municipal Code regarding notice procedures for nuisance violations. Shirley, would you read that ordinance, please?
Yes, ordinance number 4132, request to rezone.
4131.
Or, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Gosh, sorry.
You're good.
There we go. Sorry about that. Ordinance number 4131, an ordinance to amend Chapter 29.5 of the Bellevue Municipal Code by amending Section 29.5-9 regarding notice procedures for nuisance violations and to provide an effective date.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve ordinance number 4131.
I'll second that.
Motion by Preister, second by Welch. Any comments or questions? Councilwoman Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say what a great job code enforcement does for us in helping keep up the standards of our city. And thank you for legal and the administration working through this, because I know this former process has really tied them down, and people get frustrated because they've reported and then it feels like nothing happens. And this is going to help really speed up the process. So thanks for a great job.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Motion by Preister, second by Welch. On 11B, please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. 11C, ordinance number 4132, request to rezone lot 144 Nob Hill from BG to RS 84 for the purpose of an existing single-family residence. Applicants David and Deborah Rospierski, location 610 Nob Hill Terrace. Shirley, would you read that ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 4132, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Bellevue, Nebraska, as provided for by Article 3 of Ordinance number 4104 by changing the zone classification of land located at or about 610 Nob Hill Terrace, more particularly described in Section 1 of the ordinance, and to provide an effective date.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Councilwoman Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 4132.
Second.
Motion by Welch, second by Preister. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. 11D, ordinance number 4133, request to rezone Lot 1, College Apartments Addition from RG8 to RG8PS with site plan approval for the purpose of multifamily development. Applicant Elevate Lofts, LLC, general location 400 West 19th Avenue. Shirley, would you read that motion, please?
Ordinance number 4133, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of Bellevue, Nebraska, as provided for by Article 3 of Ordinance number 4104 by changing the zone classification of the land located at or about 400 West 19th Avenue, more particularly described in Section 1 of the ordinance, and to provide an effective date.
Thank you, and do I have a motion? Councilman Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion, we approve ordinance number 4133.
I'll second that.
Motion by Cook, seconded by Welch. Any comments or questions? Councilman Casey?
Thank you, Mayor. I may have some questions in a minute, but I'd first just like to make some general comments. And foremost, I'd like to thank and commend the neighbors who were so passionate and engaged in this process. I've been extremely impressed with the professionalism and the tenacity of the entire group that engaged on this and shared their comments. And for Karen, you just about wore me out. But yeah, I know that if I ever have an issue and I need somebody to defend that issue, you're the person I'm going to call. So thanks to the neighbors who were so engaged in this. I believe if we peel back the concerns of all the neighbors for this project, it really all boils down to one thing, and that is density. The allowable density under the current zoning for this properties would allow for roughly 219 apartments. The density being proposed by the developer is for 168 apartments, 51 less than what could actually go there if we left it at the current zoning. But whether it's 219 or 168 units, that level of density for a relatively small plot does seem a lot, and it certainly offers some concerns. Foremost would be the traffic issue, the size and the height of the buildings. These buildings will tower over the homes in the area, and I think you could argue that they would adversely affect the nearby homes. Certainly there would be a concern with the privacy due to the height, the elevation of these buildings over the neighboring homes, the noise pollution, the light pollution by the additional vehicles on this property. And then finally, the effective containment of the water runoff. You know, when you add 60% more concrete and building to this high point on the property, there's certainly a concern with water runoff. But all that said, the City Council last year approved this redevelopment plan for the property, and the Planning Commission just a month ago recommended approval for this PS overlay and for the site plan before us tonight. And of course, the current zoning, which is RS8, already allows for high density development on this property, and it doesn't require further City Council approval. Personally, I believe 168 apartments is too much for this area. That said, I respect the city experts who weighed in on this and looked at the plan and said it will work. In a meeting between the developer and the neighbors this past Sunday, the developer stated that 168 units was what he would need to make this project financially viable. Those were my words of what he shared. And I guess we have to trust that that's the case here. So I guess the elephant in the room tonight really is, what will the developer do if the decision tonight is to vote no? For what I hope are obvious reasons, I'm not going to ask him that question. He's awfully committed to this development. He's dedicated and committed a lot of time and dollars towards this project to date. So do we approve this action tonight? And then do we hold the developer to his commitments that he's made to the neighbors? I'm not sure. Do we deny the action and possibly live with even a larger, single, maybe more obtrusive unit, a center building on that whole property? And if we do that, are we still dealing with all the same issues that I mentioned earlier? So this is a tough decision, and it's not a decision that I take lightly. I think when people say between a rock and a hard place, this is what they're referring to. This is absolutely a rock and a hard place for me personally, and I suspect for the rest of the council. So with that, I'll let others speak, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman, I appreciate those comments. I certainly agree with all of them. I would prefer, since at that meeting, that we lay this over till the next meeting and make a decision. And what I'd like to see in that time, there were some agreements on fencing and some others, some even after the meeting that I think took place. I'd like to see those in writing so that we have them and maybe signed and even notarized. And that may be above what's normally required. But when I look at this, I see a great opportunity for somebody to develop the area, and that's going to be beneficial to them. But I would never want that to be a problem for somebody else. I'm always looking at how we do it so that everybody benefits, or at least they get some benefit. So I'm not trying to delay it, but in the meeting on Sunday, we did hear that the development isn't going to start till next year, and only some utility work might be in place to be done now. So I don't see it as holding up the project. One of my, traffic is definitely a concern. The other big concern is drainage, and I know, as you stated, Councilman, that this meets our current standards. However, our current standards were made long before we have rains of 5 inches in 1 hour. If that hillside is barren from the trees and the vegetation that's on it to build this development during a time when we get, and we just had one in September, right across the river in Iowa, a 5-inch rain within an hour, that hillside is going to be coming down on people. I don't know how we prevent that, because the rubber plastic barriers that are at bottoms of hills when construction sites are put in can't contain that kind of runoff. I would like to see us do a little bit more internally on that, and I would like to see the neighbors and the developers get together and put whatever they have agreed to, and I don't know all of those things, fencing was one of them, but put that in writing so we have a little more assurance. I would have a little more assurance. I think it would be helpful to the neighbors. So that's the comment that I have, and I would wait for other comments before making a motion to carry it over for 2 weeks till the next meeting.
Thank you. Councilman Burns?
I just want to thank Councilman Casey for his comments. I think that was very well said. And Don is elegant as always and very diplomatic. But I just wanted to express that I would be supportive of laying this over or tabling this so that, whichever promises were made on Sunday, can be put in writing so that there is some accountability if we are to approve this at such time. So I just wanted to express that I'm supportive of that. Otherwise, I suppose tonight, just to be straightforward, I'd be voting no.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask for more comments, Tammy, do you have some of those agreements in place?
One of the things that was discussed Sunday night, and I had a conversation with TD2, the applicant's engineer, and the applicant, was fencing. Fencing was a large concern. Stacy or Phil, I don't know if you can turn on the overhead for me. Based on that, the developer did send me an amended site plan that proposes a 6-foot wood privacy fence on the property line. It may be hard to see, but that is specifically called out. So I do have a document that shows that. I know the neighbors wanted a taller fence, 8 foot, 10 foot or taller. Legally, the city council does not have the power to approve that because our zoning ordinance in a residential district would only allow for a 6-foot fence. So again, I have the amended site plan that shows that. Public Works did get a chance to review it. Dave, I don't know if you have any comments about fencing.
The concern I had with the fencing, the fencing is fine except for that little piece in the southwest corner there where that drain pipe is. There would have to be some type of opening or something put into the fence at that point to allow the
runoff water through rather than creating a dam, let's say, with the fence. So if there's some sort of opening, or it could be raised slightly, or a flume or something like that, or maybe even a pipe, that would alleviate that.
Again, the site plan, I know it's hard to see, it shows it, the fencing along the property line, and it specifically calls out the 6-foot wood privacy.
Any other agreements that were talked about that?
Rich, I don't know if you can weigh in, or those that were there. I think, other concerns shared were those that the city council has probably heard previously. I think fencing was the main one to be changed.
Yeah, I believe, to my knowledge, the only issue I felt we walked away from that was an issue that needed to be discussed and resolved was the fencing. I mean, there were a lot of discussions about different aspects, and again, the neighbors shared a lot of concerns with different pieces. I think the developer answered many of those, maybe not to the liking of the neighbors, but certainly responded to them. But again, I think the fencing was the only one that I recall as being an outstanding issue.
Councilman Cook?
Tammy, so in the site plan, that's on the agenda tonight. Is that where some of these issues would have to be put in? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it depends on the issue, but yeah, something such as the fence, if city council were so inclined to make a motion and it be contingent upon fencing, I did just want you folks to see that TD2 and the developer has put that in writing. So that would need to be made part of the site plan in that type of situation.
I was trying to read my notes, so I'm going to ask for, I didn't hear everything, I wasn't paying attention. Are you talking a 6-foot fence around the property?
Correct.
Now, there was discussion about maybe a 4 or 5 foot fence right at the parking lot so the headlights went, because I mean...
The issue I would have with that is there's extensive landscaping that's required.
Okay.
And basically, if we trap that landscaping in between two fences, it's going to be a maintenance nightmare. And I don't know, talking to Mr. Gotigan, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this. I think that would impede the detention, the drainage situation, because you're also dealing with retaining walls, some as tall as 20 foot. I think it would be very difficult to maintain those areas. You'd kind of have a no man's land in between those two fences.
I would concur with Tammy. I think she stated that very well.
Okay. I did have a private discussion with the developer and made a comment. Now, maybe this would be addressed differently, but in between the buildings, there was a wall, and it was just a drawing. And I said, if you're on the back side and you can't get in the garage and go up to get to the front, and I said, it'd be nice if there was steps that would go up. There's two buildings, and there's no steps up, and then in the middle of the second and third is a parking lot, but there's no steps. Is that something that would have to be added to the site plan, or? Not in my opinion. That's something that would be done as part of the permit. Site plan, we would be more concerned about location of the buildings and siting of the buildings, but architectural features or, specific features like that could be dealt with the building permit process. But what if we would forget and it wasn't added or put in, or we don't know where the location of it's going to be? Again, it could be made part of a motion or part of the discussion, but steps aren't something that I don't think you would put on the site plan. Okay. Again, it could be, I believe, crafted in a motion if that were the wishes of the council, but that's more of a specific detail that would be dealt with at time of building permit. He mentioned, I don't remember the word, I think he said there will be, but like a manager on site. Is that something we'd put in a site plan? I mean, I think it was pretty big to the people that were there, knowing that if there was a problem and there was a manager on site 24/7, they would have someone to go to talk to. I mean, there's nothing in writing that says he has to do it. Again, that's not something that would be part of the site plan. I suppose the city could enter into some type of an agreement with the developer, but I think over time that would be very difficult to enforce. Okay. I don't know if Ms. Battalion wants to weigh in on that or has any.
I'm not aware of the city entering into those types of agreements with developers. And if they're not in the site plan, I don't know what mechanism the city could do to have an agreement like that with the developer.
I understand that, but I think they brought up, there were several points, but I think in this particular one, I got the feeling that it would make them very comfortable knowing if you go to this building, apartment 23, the manager lives there, you can talk to him or at least call him. I mean, I don't want someone to bang on my door off duty, but I don't know. I'm just throwing out some of the things they said, and I don't know how people feel, but it's some of the things that were brought up, and I feel pretty confident if it's not in a plan, if it's not in a motion. I ran into this before saying, well, we talked about it, and he said he would, not this particular case here, but they said they would do it, and the response I got back, it wasn't in the plan, it wasn't in a motion, so they don't have to do it. So I don't know how important that is. I guess part of it also would be is there was a lot of concern about trees, and the developer was very kind, saying we'll try to save what we can. But I know a lot of times it's a lot easier just to knock things down, get things out of your way, and start putting things up. I know you can't really put that in there, but I would in a plan or whatever. But I would sure hope that the developer, and I think they would at least honor some of the things that they said they would try to do, and truly make an attempt to do them, even if there's maybe a little bit of more of an expense or whatever, just to get it done. Give me a second here. I don't know if I had any. We talked about lighting, and that probably is standard where it's a downcast type. And we talked about sound, talked about the buffer. Is there anything? I mean, these water basins are pretty much just a standard basin. They're going in every development we get. Is that correct?
I can let Mr. Godigan weigh in on that, but yes, it's part of, the overall watershed rules and regulations that we have for new developments. They have to control their runoff.
And that's all figured off of square footage and how much water can come down the hill?
Yes, it's calculated off of the coefficient of absorption of the soil, combination of soil, rooftop, sidewalks, concrete, etc., and then how much landscape area, grass area, let's say you have.
Okay.
The storm frequency event, the time of the event, the time for the water to get from one end to the other, and then times the acreage. And then when they size the detention cell, they size it to handle that 100-year storm. So if you get the 100-year storm, it's contained in the pond. Mm-hmm. And then it runs out at the pre-existing runoff rate that you would have as the site sets today.
Now, when the buildings were built, they didn't require it back in 1900 or whenever they were built. I mean, 50, 80 years ago, I shouldn't say 1900, I apologize, but 70, 80 years ago, whenever they were built, there was probably no collection pond there, was there?
Oh, no.
I walked it, and it appeared there is a low area that's probably collected water, but.
I think over the years, the previous owners have attempted to hold some on the site. In my previous life here at the city, I remember going up to the site a couple of times and working with them on some things like that. But that's been 15, 20 years ago. Okay. But now they're designing an actual detention cell that's designed specifically for this site.
So it'll be much more efficient because it's going to be developed with the development.
Yes. A lot of it's there already. There is a pond there right now.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to either make an amendment and put in maybe, I don't, if it even makes sense. I don't know how the developer want that. I think there needs to be steps from the lower level to get to the top level. Maybe, I just don't know if that has to be in a site plan or an amendment, or if it's something that will be addressed. I think the 24-hour or someone on site as a manager, I took it as 24-hour. Now maybe the owner will correct me and say, no, they'll just be one there 8 hours a day, work, and then they're going to go home. But I took it as someone would be there 24 hours. I don't know what Don is specific to. I guess my problem is if there's things
that it needs, I would support a delay if in fact we're going to get things put in there. If we're just going to come back in 2 weeks and the owner doesn't want to do it, or the developer doesn't want to do it, then let's vote and move on. I mean, unless there's something specific that we want to include.
One thing I would say about the steps is, with a building permit, it has to be ADA accessible. And so, I can't speak for the chief building official, but if you're going to require something like that, we have to make sure that it would comply with code and that they would be able to meet ADA requirements. So that would be my one concern.
Okay, well then, I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if it's there. It was just a thought, and then he even said, yeah, I was thinking about that too, but it wasn't in the drawing, and it wasn't in the sense that, is it in fact going to be done or not going to be done? And
the city staff has not gotten to the point, obviously developer hasn't submitted any architectural or any construction permits, so we aren't to that point to have reviewed it. So that would be my hesitancy, is requiring something that staff hasn't had a chance to review, just to make sure that it would be code compliant.
okay. My only, Mr. Price, my only holdup is what are we going to get done in 2 weeks? What would we ask to be added or not, and just come back? I don't think the traffic issue is going to change any. Some of those things I don't think they're going to alter. I think it's just when we're talking about fences and lighting and will you do this and do that. But I think when it gets to traffic and a few of these issues, I don't think that's going to probably change. Help me out here.
Okay, you ready for me to
Sure.
respond? Because I'm ready. Thank you, and I appreciate you identifying some of those other things. One of them was a second access to add to the list you already did. And I don't know about driving a fire truck, but trying to drive in, back up, get out, that's able to be done, but that's close. A second entry exit may not be feasible. The grade wouldn't allow it to go all the way around. I recognize that. But what I would like to see, to specifically answer your question and not just delay, is that between now and then, that we get some questions more specifically answered from our staff, but that we get even if it's only one representative, Karen or somebody, from the neighbors to sit with the developer, see what is agreeable with the fence, and find out what all of those things are possible to get done, and then we get that in writing. I'm not wanting to get anything that isn't agreeable, but I would like to at least make an attempt on behalf of the neighbors to get whatever we can and is feasible in writing, so that we've done our due diligence to make sure, as we've heard before, can sleep at night, at least in my case, I can, and then go forward. And from what we were told, and you were at the meeting, so you know what was said, there wasn't going to be anything developed yet this year. It was going to start in the spring, so we're not delaying anything. If I were to ask, what is the harm in 2 weeks? Maybe we could get help. Maybe we can get some agreements. Maybe we can get some things to improve it. If it's going to pass and go through, let's at least do our due diligence further and get some things maybe added. And you have a list of them. I don't know what the city can do about traffic, but that's going to be a nightmare, and probably one of the worst in the whole city. A second exit entry, if it could be worked out, would at least be something. So that's what I'm envisioning.
Councilman Preister, a second access isn't possible because this property is landlocked. Stacy, I don't know if you can go back to my laptop on the screen. So there's already apartments constructed here. There's single-family residential around the rest of it. So the only possible, and this is also developed, so the only possible access point is the public street access off of West 19th Avenue. They don't, because everything else is developed around there with buildings, they don't have another potential unless they were to buy property and demo a building.
And I've driven up there and walked around it too. I'm familiar with that, but there was some discussion yesterday about some potential. There is one property owner who is allowing utilities to go through. So there possibly could be potential, but you're thinking there isn't?
No, not with the spacing in between these houses, because you're talking, 50-foot right away. That's a lot different than a utility easement, so there wouldn't be enough room for any other, even a private access. You'd have to have at least 30 feet of width, and then you gotta have to have setback for those houses as well. And the age of these houses, they sit far too close together. So again, in my opinion, unless you were gonna demo a house, but even then you're dealing with steep grade, and I don't know that you could make the slope work. And Mr. Godigan, again, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, but I'm just not sure how you would make a second access work in this particular situation.
Without purchasing right away or purchasing property, probably not. And then, like you said, if you did have it, the grade is quite steep. So I think it would be really tough to maneuver, especially in the winter.
Thank you both for that. And it is challenging, I agree. That's one of the issues. There were others that I still think we're not hurting anything, and for a delay, maybe some other things can still be worked out, and we can get more of that feedback for why we can't do some things.
Councilman Casey.
I can't I can't imagine that there's an issue that hasn't been discussed, partially thanks to Karen. I mean, every possible concern has been brought forward, and most of the issues, the runoff, the traffic, all those things, if they weren't talked to at the last council meeting, a lot of those issues I personally engaged with city staff to get answers to and to confirm. So I'm not trying to deny what you're saying, but I think many of the issues have already been addressed, and I don't know further discussing them is going to change anything, with one exception. And I do have a concern about the fencing. And can you put that overhead back up? I'll just go ahead and speak to it. So the fence that's being proposed, the solid fence along the property line where currently there's a chain link fence basically there, is great. And I know the neighbors certainly on the Madison side would absolutely appreciate that. But I don't know that it alleviates the issue of the lights from all of those parking stalls on the west side of the project shining possibly into the homes of those on Madison. And I don't know how you fix that short of putting up a solid fence along the parking lot. And I absolutely understand Public Works and Planning's concern about doing that. I just, I believe that's with the elevation, I've been on that lot so many times, I feel like I own it. I just believe that there needs to be some way to control that light pushing into those houses on Madison and to the south also.
Councilwoman Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, one of my concerns is, Paul has asked about the steps and has asked about the manager. And I'm wondering if by delaying it 2 weeks, that can become an agreement between the homeowners and the developer to do that. So it's not something that we would have to include in a motion that we would have to mandate, because I'm concerned that we start to mandate that, then we have other properties that come up and we're gonna have to start mandating that. Where if we can get the developer and the residents to have an agreement with that, get it in writing, then the government doesn't have to step into a private entity to do that. That would be my reason that we would delay it for a couple weeks, plus to give staff an opportunity to see, what can be worked out with regards to ADA and public sector, private sector type of thing. Secondly, this is the most amazing study I have ever seen, Miss Karen. And if I ever need someone to do research for me, I'm going to hire you because you were extremely thorough, brought a lot of great information. It was handled very objectively. You did your research. You did a great job. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you. I just, I brought it up a little bit last week. I don't know Mr. Pianobianco. I know who he is and what he does, but he's no different than any other developer. These guys are risk takers. They are in rising prices right now, labor shortages, interest rates are high. So I don't know what his plan is and what he's got locked in as far as this development exactly. If there's any timeline, I would think before we delay it, we just ask him to answer that question for us would be one thing. But the precedent that we set is the thing I worry about most. He bought a lot, obviously, that allowed 219 units to be built on it. How do we regulate that? He's actually zoning it something in our favor, putting less units on there. How do we regulate somebody that bought a lot yesterday, 10 years ago for investment, or to work a plan based on what the current zoning is? How do we change that zoning on somebody? I don't know how you do it. I feel awful. And I'll just dumb it down. If I have a 2-bedroom house on a RS 84 lot and I want to add 3 bedrooms and 1,500 square feet to it, are the neighbors going to be able to shut me down from doing that now? I mean, is that the precedent we want to set? I don't think it is. That's very dangerous. I think we're liable, and it gives the message to developers or even homeowners. I don't think I'm going to buy in Bellevue. It's going to be up to the council to decide what I can do on that lot, even though it says I can do it in black and white. So I think it's a terrible precedent that we set. I'm all for trying to get the best we can for the residents. I think whatever we can do under those rules, if it's delaying it 2 weeks, if that doesn't create any issue, I don't see a problem with that. I'm not sure what we can change. We can't change the traffic. I don't see that changing. Height restrictions, they've got the right to go 7 stories if they want. So I'm not sure what will get changed in 2 weeks, but I just want you to, I'm not in favor of changing somebody's zoning out from underneath them and making it harder on them. Making it easier is fine, but that's my thoughts. I just want to make sure that was clear.
So can we ask the applicant if we delay it for 2 weeks?
We can
if
ask
that's a
them
problem?
Specific question, yeah. Would you come forward, please? Yeah. I guess the specific question the council has is, would a 2-week delay to try to understand, work these items out, would that affect what you're doing?
Yeah, 2 weeks is specifically, if it's 2 weeks, it's not going to ruin the project. Okay. I guess I want to make clear that we are behind schedule on this. Mayor Hike, like you had mentioned, there's been a lot of changes in the environment. So a lot of things that we originally were anticipating with costs, have changed. We do have a plan together. We have financing lined up. So, all of these things are very time sensitive. Working with the engineer and the architect, obviously we have to get past this phase, to finalize all of these prints and get everything over to planning for permits and approvals. So specifically 2 weeks is not necessarily going to sink the project. Further delays are costly. And I guess I did, if you don't mind, or if I'm allowed to speak, maybe just a little bit to maybe a couple of the questions or concerns that came up.
Council okay with that? I think we're good as long as it's questions that we ask.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I think that you know, again, as mentioned, you know, there's certain things here with the zoning that, you know, that are, I guess, kind of implied or assumed when you go into one of these projects and we go down the road of the market study and everything else. You know, and I understand that there are requirements, and then beyond that, there are just things that I feel that you know, it's something that we should do to be a good neighbor. So I mean, there's not a requirement to have, you know, a privacy fence on the property line, but that's something that I made, you know, a commitment to the neighbors in this meeting that we had on Sunday, because I want to be a good neighbor and I want to be a quality part of the city. You know, additionally, we had discussed the stairs, and we discussed other concerns, or potentially trees, if there's some trees that we can keep, and even right down to full-time staff. Now, I don't know if you remember what I said specifically at the meeting. I can't guarantee that someone's going to live there, you know, but our intention is absolutely 170 units to have full-time staff, full-time leasing, full-time maintenance. You know, so I'm happy to give the commitment that I want to run this project in an ethical way that's going to be good for the neighborhood. You know, I have no desire to create conflict or anything like that. So I guess, you know, I would just say if there are certain things that might not be able to be specifically agreed upon on the site plan, or if there are specific things that are not in writing, you know, I'm on record here, I'm being recorded. It's my intention to work with the neighbors and be a good neighbor, and that's what I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you. Any other specific questions? Would you just state your name and address for the...
Andrew Panabianco, 18822 County Road P38, Bennington, Nebraska.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Councilman Preister. Oh, sorry. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask Councilman Preister what his thoughts are with regards to, are you still thinking you want to delay it 2 weeks, or you satisfied with what he has said?
Thank you for the question, and I was just going to suggest that he's a man of his word, and I think that's good. But as Councilman Cook said, if it's not in writing, doesn't count for much. So I appreciate the development, I appreciate the investment, I appreciate what's being done, and the challenge of doing it is certainly not an easy one. But if we have a chance to do some things that we can do without changing zoning, without harming anything, then I would prefer to do that. Maybe nobody else wants to do it, but I think in that 2 weeks, we can get Karen and Andy, his engineers, whoever else, together. We can find out what we can agree on. I'd much rather have amicable agreements and be good neighbors, which is what we just heard. And it takes the monkey off our back in making some of those decisions. If we can't get it done, we can't. But at least we tried. That's what I'm attempting to do. 2 weeks, we try. And I'm willing to be a part of that. I'm willing to help facilitate it. And I just want to compliment Councilman Casey for arranging the meeting, maybe even paying for a facility, putting a tremendous amount of time, of his own time, in researching and doing things here, and the developer and the people working on it coming to the meeting, putting even extra time beyond what normally might be. So I value all of that. I also value the neighbors, and think it is an excellent report and very, very technical and defined in its content. So I value everybody. I'm trying to see where we can come to some final agreement. And I will make that motion when everybody else is finished, and we'll see where it goes. At least I did the part that I can offer.
Any other comments or questions? Councilman Casey?
I'm not totally against, against that idea. Purely selfishly, I am out of town leaving Friday and going for 2 weeks. So I will, if we delay it 2 weeks, I won't be here. I won't be here to facilitate that, and I won't be here to vote on that decision, whatever that's going to be. But so just, I don't know if delaying it for a month is acceptable. If you want to go, if everybody agrees with the delay, or if you want to leave it at 2 weeks. But just so you know my situation.
I appreciate that and understand the importance of you not being in town at that time.
Councilman Cook?
I know I brought up several examples, but I'm going to believe this developer that he's going to work with these people and do the best he can. I'm going to have a little problem delaying it, and here's why. We've had a planning commission meeting, we've had city council meetings, we've met with the neighborhood. I think the developer has heard everything. I mean, I think everything have said, I heard it. Some things are thrown in that site plan, some things are not. I think enough has been laid out there. We've had a very active neighborhood that's been at the planning commission meeting, have spoken, they approved, the planning commission approved it. It came here for public meetings. We had a meeting, there was about 15 residents at that meeting on Sunday. I just think that if he was willing, and I'm not putting words in his mouth, I just think if it was something that he would have agreed to, he would have put it in the site plan and it'd be there today. So I just think he's heard everything, and I think we're leaving a hope that maybe something in the zoning will change, or that this is going to go away, or he's going to take a building and instead of making 168 apartments, they're hoping it's 30 apartments. That's not going to happen. And I just think all the other stuff, even the stuff I mentioned, I think he's heard it. I think he knows about it. I think he's considered it. And it was put in that site plan for a reason, not in the site plan for a reason. And I agree with the mayor. If we could start putting out little things to all these developers come down, we're going to get a reputation that you go down there and they're going to, I want good development. I think we do it. We got a great planning commission, great planning department. They look at all these things. They walk developers through it, engineers through it, and they always just bring us a plan, and normally we just vote and move on. So that's...
Thank you. Any more comments? Councilman McCaw? You just feel like you had to do it?
I just felt like no, I don't feel like I have to do it. I've spent a lot of time up there. I spent some time with Karen over the fence, actually. It wasn't a planned meeting, but we did spend a lot of time talking. I did get the report. I read the report. I think that I think I agree with what Mr. Cook just said about we have to be very careful where we try and drive this thing. I think that in the 3 years I've been on the council that we've certainly asked a lot of times if the neighbors could get together with the developers and try and work out some of those lighting issues. And one of the churches was if everybody pulled out of the church at night, it was going to shine in my bedroom window, right? So can we get some trees? Can we get something to block that? And we let the neighbors and the developer work that out. I think if we start asking for a manager 24/7 on the property, then I'm starting to feel like I own the property now if I'm going to start managing that. I think that's a demand that maybe it's not in our little cup of tea here. So I think what Mr. Cook just said was the developer's heard probably everything. He's probably made the adjustments that he can make or he's willing to make. Maybe there's some more, right, that they can work out as neighbors and developers and being a good neighbor. But putting this off for 2 more weeks, I agree, isn't going to change the water, isn't going to change the roads, isn't going to change the lay of the land, right? But whatever that's worth, I'm not in favor of putting this off another 2 weeks. I think all the information's on the table, and it's time to give that our thought.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, the votes are questionable, but I'm still gonna make the motion in an attempt because I think it's worth discussing. We're not mandating anything by the developer. We're just asking in an agreeable way, can you sit down, see what we can get in writing, what they do and is possible? We've at least tried. So I will move, and I didn't know about the absence, but I understand the sensitivity of that too. And I don't want to delay it longer. I gave my word I would only do 2 weeks. So I will move to delay the vote on this for 2 weeks to the next council meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion by Preister, seconded by Burns to delay the vote on 11D for 2 weeks, or, sorry.
Mayor Hike, we
Yep.
already have a motion on the table to approve made by Cook and seconded by Welch.
This would be in
So
place of that or an amendment to it.
So you're gonna amend?
Amendment.
Okay.
Any questions on the delay? Any further comments or questions on the delay? All right, please vote.
Shirley, is a screen on our computer, are we voting for the correct thing?
This is for the delay,
Okay.
yes.
It says open for public hearing.
Refresh. Yeah, I just did mine. And then it says delay.
If you refresh.
Refresh it.
Vote is 4 noes to 2 yeses, so motion failed.
Okay, so that motion failed. So we're back to the original motion by Cook, seconded by Welch, to approve 11D. Any further comments or discussion or questions? All right. So this is to approve. Please vote.
Vote is 4 yeses, 2 noes, motion carried to approve ordinance 4133.
All right, thank you, everyone, for all that discussion and all the extra work everybody put into it, and our citizens as well. Item 12, ordinances for public hearing. Good. Second reading, we have none. 13, ordinances for introduction. First reading, we have none. Item 14, public hearing on matters other than ordinances, none. Resolutions, none. Brings us to 16, current business. 16B, approve final payment application, substantial completion of project, and the final project quantities for closing of project for the Galvin and Birchcrest intersection improvements in an amount not to exceed $26,975.82, making the total project cost $539,516.30. Do I have a motion? Councilwoman Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that we approve item 16B.
Second.
Motion by Welch, seconded by McCaw. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 16C, approve final payment application, substantial completion of project and final project quantities for the closing of the project for the Harlan Drive and Fort Crook Road Bridge approach replacement in an amount not to exceed $88,613.33, making the total project cost of $1,696,117.90. Do I have a motion? Councilman Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion we approve 16C.
I'll second that.
Motion by Cook, seconded by Welch. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 16D, approve final work change order, substantial completion of project and final project quantities for the closing of the project for CDBG Valley View sidewalk improvements in an amount not to exceed $22,302.52, making the total project cost $155,896.27. Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to approve item 16D.
Second.
Motion by Preister, second by McCaw. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Item 16E, approve final payment application, substantial completion of project and final project quantities for closing a project on the pedestrian bridge demolition at Galvin Road and Hanson Avenue in an amount not to exceed $24,099.60, making the total project cost of $183,351. Motion, please. Councilman Casey?
I'll make a motion, motion to approve 16E.
Second.
Motion by Casey, seconded by Preister. Any comments or questions? Please vote.
Councilman Cook, have you voted?
Yes, I did.
There we go. All in favor, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Item 16F, approve and authorize the mayor to sign amendment number 3 to the professional services agreement with Leo A. Daly for the Bellevue Professional Building located at 2206 Longo Drive in an amount not to exceed $3,450. Do I have a motion? Councilwoman Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion that we approve item 16F.
Second.
Motion by Welch, seconded by Casey. Any discussion or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 16G, approve and authorize MUD to accept the bid and estimated project cost for the MUD Southeast Water Main Extension Project in an amount not to exceed $17,450,360. Councilman Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion that we table this indefinitely for staff to seek possible funding options which were just brought to the attention of our staff.
I'll second that.
Motion by Cook, seconded by Welch to table indefinitely to review further funding options.
You'll change that on the motion?
I'll change that.
Okay.
Any comments or questions on that? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 16H, approve and authorize the mayor to sign the proposal with Burrell Enterprises LLC for the emergency stormwater repair and paving at 33rd Avenue and Chandler Road in an amount not to exceed $55,640. Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve item 16H.
Second.
Motion by Preister, seconded by Cook. Any comments or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. 16I, approve the acquisitions, permanent and temporary easements for the 36th Street Improvement Project in an amount not to exceed $17,500. Do I have a motion? Councilwoman Welch?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion we approve item 16I.
Second.
Motion by Welch, seconded by Casey. Any comments or questions? Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 16J, approve purchase of a 2023 Ford Bronco Sport 4x4 for the Public Works Department in an amount not to exceed $33,674. Take a motion. Councilman Casey?
Make a motion to approve item 16J.
Second?
Motion by Casey, second by McCaw. Any discussion or questions? Councilman Burns?
Yeah, I know this item is budgeted. I just want to know what it's going to be used for.
This will be the Public Works Admin Office. We have 3 vehicles at the present time. We will be replacing a Jeep vehicle that we have that will go on auction, and this vehicle will replace that one.
Okay. So, you mean just like from getting, like, if you're
Day-to-day traffic, day-to-day going out in the field.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Motion by Casey, second by McCaw. Please vote.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 16K, approve and authorize the mayor to sign the amended and restated easement with OPPD. And Councilwoman Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve item 16K.
Second.
Motion by Welch, second by Cook. And just to note, the OPPD representatives are here, I believe, if there's any questions from the council. Appreciate you coming. And Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. I couldn't tell from the map, and I didn't have time to drive out there. So I think it's just the easement and the right-of-way, but I don't exactly know how it's moving or understand. I know there's a new addition going on, but I'm just not real clear. So maybe if somebody could come up from OPPD if they're here and help me understand, unless staff.
Dave, do you have any information on that, or?
I think I would prefer that the
Okay.
OPPD representatives to explain.
Just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Jenny Lee, Omaha Public Power District, 444 South 16th Street Mall, Omaha, Nebraska.
And John Palmtag, Omaha Public Power District, or Real Property Department, same address.
Great, and if you would sign in, and then my question, could you just help me to understand the direction? I think it's going closer to the veterans home, but where it's located and what the value of it is?
Yeah, so actually opposite, going further away from the veterans home and their current expansion that's going on. So what we're proposing is that we relocate our high voltage line further to the west, actually. So in that, yeah, we can pull up a map. And it might be easier to tell through Tammy, maybe that exhibit that kind of shows our existing easement area and the new proposed. So we have 2 right-of-way easements in this particular area to the west of the veterans home. The one with the larger hatch marking is our existing easement corridor. What we're proposing is to further relocate this line to the west within that gray area in between both of those existing easements. And so there would be an angle structure on the city of Bellevue property of what we're proposing and relocate that easement area to accommodate the construction at the vet's home.
And in moving it west, that's not.
Moving it west, further away from the development.
Right, rather than to the east, okay.
Exactly.
That would make sense for the veterans home. I'm just wondering, we're coming close to the development of houses on the west side.
Oh, sorry, the housing develop, okay, got it.
Well, no, I was thinking about the veterans home and where it was gonna be, because in my mind, I didn't know where it was shifting. But that doesn't impact the houses or the residents?
No.
They've still got enough buffer zone there, too.
Correct, yeah, that's quite a large open area. Right there to the west.
Okay, but I think they're gonna build on the east side of that road back there, but I'm not certain of that.
I'm not aware of that either.
Okay.
And when we say east side of the road, sorry, I'm not sure what road we're referring to.
If you look at the image there, on the left-hand side as I'm facing it, that road near where the cursor is.
Harrison Tull Drive. Are you talking, Mr. Price, are you talking about the one that runs just west of the vet's home?
Well, when I was referring to the houses being built, I was referring to the one you're closest to there.
Okay, this one. This is Quail Drive. So this area here is all owned by the city. The area farther to the west has been previously sold to a developer. This area has always been encumbered by easements because you've got the substation right here. So none of our current plans show any development in this area other than to keep it as open area just because of the existing easements that are there.
Okay, I didn't realize that we owned all the way back to
Correct.
there. I knew we had
Correct.
some of it, but
So this is all City of Bellevue.
Yeah.
So we currently have our master park plan shows kind of a regional park up in this area with a lake and trails. It just envisions, you know, open space, parking, things of that nature to the south, just because we have the high voltage power lines that come out of that substation. So it's limited now. So basically, when staff looked at this, there is an impact to us, but it's fairly minimal just because of, again, the existing structures that are already there. And if I zoom in, you can probably see them. So you've got lines here, you've got lines here. They're adjusting it a little bit more and impacting more of this area, but there's really not much we could do here anyway because of the existing easements.
right, and that's not the major part of what we're proposing for
Correct.
a park, which
Correct.
is farther to the north and east. I've walked that many times. Okay, that helps. Thank you both for being here to
Yeah, of course.
answer and clarify for me.
And if
Thank
it
you,
helps,
Tammy.
on this exhibit, this is Harrison Tull Drive right here where my cursor is. And so this is the existing easement. And then the shaded area is the impacted area, correct?
Yep, the proposed relocation easement area.
So you can see it's in between the two existing because this cross-hatched here is also existing.
So it's all on city property. Now
Correct.
that building that's there, is that staying there as it is?
Which building?
Substation or?
Yeah, the substation?
Oh,
The-
yeah,
Yep.
that's
Okay.
staying, yeah.
All right, okay, thank you.
Councilman Cook?
Tammy, I'm not sure I heard them right, but is there going to be an addition to the Veterans Home? Is that what we said?
Yes, and
They're
just
building
just
it.
for the record, the city doesn't. We don't have any permitting rights over the veterans home, but yeah, and this aerial photo actually shows it. But they are doing a new addition in this area. It was during construction that they discovered that there was more of an impact to the infrastructure there than they realized. So they had to pause construction. And that's why OPPD came to us in this situation and said, hey, we're trying to facilitate this for the vets home. Would the city be willing to adjust the easement or give us an easement?
Okay, I didn't know that they were doing anything at the Veterans Home. Thank you. Follow up to that, Timmy. So has that expansion been on delay pending this easement change? I know looked like externally it was almost
Yes,
done.
and again, the city has not been involved because we don't have any permitting jurisdiction over the federal government. But yes, it's my understanding everything had to be put in hold because of this issue. So that's why OPPD came to us and said, this is what we're trying to do to facilitate the addition to the vets home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tammy, the access back to our big piece of land, we can still get a road back through those easements. Is that?
Yeah, and our access, Harrison Tull is the main one through there. That's the main road into the development. But yes, we'd still be able to, have access, have parking with those easements. That's something I believe OPPD would allow.
Yep, and we just work with you on that, yep.
Any other comments or questions? Motion by Welch, seconded by Cook. Please vote. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, good, you got me, okay. Yep.
All in favor, motion carried.
Thank you. Item 17, administration reports. Comments must be limited to items on the current report. September report is attached. Any comments or questions on that? Councilman Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. On the meeting with the Bridge Commission, just could we get an update on the status? We had talked one time about replacing the bridge, and we had some discussions at the state level with the state engineer. Now we end up with a new state engineer. I'm just not sure where the status of, with the Bridge Commission pursuing that with us, where that all stands.
So our meeting was basically to draft an MOU between the city and the Bridge Commission along with MAPPA as to what the future status of the bridge would be. So long haul is, in coordination with MAPPA, is to work for the funding for the bridge replacement.
Great.
So we're probably 25, 30 years out on that, but the MOU, in order to start that process for the funding side of it, is to show that basically the Bridge Commission 25 years from now will go away. It'll no longer be a paid toll bridge. It'll be just a regular bridge like what we have on Highway 34, and then the city would take control of said bridge. And that's kind of pounding out what the MOU is. We haven't finalized that. We have another meeting with all the Bridge Commission players as well as the MAPPA representatives to get the right wording in place so we can advance forward on what that MOU looks like. But long haul, the bridge is to be replaced. And like I said, it's probably 25, 30 years out. Bridge Commission will run it through that whole period of time. And then once that bridge is basically replaced through funding that's going to come from outside sources, not us, then the city would take control of that bridge.
Okay. There was some discussion about using some of the infrastructure money that was appropriated if we were ready and we had the studies and things done, but we're not looking at a shorter time frame than the 30 years still?
No, it's always been so the lifespan of the bridge, as what their study shows, it's got another 25 years, and the Bridge Commission is fully funded to maintain that bridge and keep it up to standard through that 25 years, and that way it doesn't come back on us. But they feel that gives them time to get the agreements in place for the funding too. So there's not enough in the CARES Act or those dollars to help us supplement the bridge replacement. So nothing that's going to come on our horizon here. Probably won't be in our lifetime, but it'll be the next. So,
okay. I appreciate the work the Bridge Commission has put in, how they've maintained it, how they've increased and set money aside to pay for that replacement, and leveraging that the administration is looking at for the future that could be done so it doesn't fall on the taxpayers. So I think we're in good shape. I just didn't know, because I haven't been to any Bridge Commission's meetings in probably 9 months, maybe a little less, but about that.
they've had some changes too, so it kind of delayed us getting through the MOU. But I would agree with their management of the bridge. They've done a fantastic job. But one thing that we found is in the flood, this became the only bridge available to get across. Highway 34 was underwater, so it stressed the importance of keeping this bridge in play as well as its replacement. So it's vital to the area, and that kind of helped set the tone from MAPPA and the Fed level too. So,
yeah, and that was one good thing that came from the flood.
Yes.
All right, thank you for the information and the update.
And I'm confident that our new economic development director will find the money for us, because he's doing a good job at that. Thank you, Harrison, for what you're doing. Doing a good job. And it will be in Harrison's and probably Councilman Burns' lifetime that this happens. So.
You rule me out?
I'd never rule you out. But. Any other questions, Councilman Burns?
Jim, I just wanted to ask, just based on the conversation that we had with the whole Google Fiber, I see in here that you review Google Fiber agreement and permitting process. Can you just maybe update us on that? And just, was there any further discussion based on all the discussion that took place at the meeting?
No, so that report just basically covers prior to our last council meeting for the agreement that we had. So it was pounding out the agreement as to who does what, and some of the discussions here that we had on permitting. What was important to us that we found with the other provider too is that we only issue a block of these at a time, and if they haven't resolved issues, then we can just slow crawl the next side. But I think we've got a very decent agreement with Google to start this. We're also very comfortable with our other provider that they're meeting the needs too. So Nothing new from our last meeting with Google, and I don't think they've been in yet to apply for their permits, have they, Dave?
No, they have not.
So they're still working through theirs, but I think there was some traffic yesterday about some of the information coming back our way, so I think we'll start seeing them start applying for those permits, and we'll get a good feel where they're going.
Okay, cool. And then I also want to ask, do you have, can you update us maybe on that NC3 project a little?
So we're still heavily engaged. I think I've shared before that it's a private-public partnership along with the federal government, and the play is now on the federal government side as far as what their funding is. There were dollars appropriated to this project. The appropriation bill will come out in December to help that. So bottom line for us is it looks like we'll start grading in the spring, and that project will get off the ground in the spring. We saw renderings on the building. HDR has completed those. Those aren't out for public consumption. It's going to be it's a high-tech building in a high-tech park. But I think what you'll see here is all the pieces have now come together. And some of it is, we kind of joke about this, but we had one where on the military level, they approved the project, but then from the defense contractors, they wanted to hear the generals say it in a public forum. So it'd be like going to a Kiwanis meeting and saying, I'm in. But so they didn't accept the fact that they approved it on a military level. It has to be said in a public forum. So those things have just slowed us down as far as getting there. But look for early spring is breaking ground and moving on this thing. So we've got the entire development layout completed by HDR, and those are things that we'll be sharing with you probably in the coming months once we get past our, we're all underneath NDAs as to what we can disclose, but once we get to that level, we'll start sharing that with you guys where we're at. So
cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll put those in the record. No closed session. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councilwoman Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Welch, second by Burns. Please vote. Thank you.